Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to be all about Autobattle for Jaldabaoth's Piercing Gale on the Expert difficulty. I've been working on this for a couple days now, trying to experiment with different teams to see what I can make work without access to Gala Leonidas, and so far this is the best I've come up with. I've had over a 90% success rate with this team, obviously some pretty powerful dragons, some limited adventures, but so far, this is what is working for me the best as somebody who doesn't have Leonidas. I know there's a lot else going on in Dragalia Lost right now. We have our free summons. Nightmare and Omega opened up for the raid event. We also have a brand new showcase, which I do promise to review. Of course, wait to summon until you do all your free summons, so there's no rush. But I wanted to talk about this because it's really occupied my headspace since Jaldabaoth released, and it's been a very fun challenge and very unique battle to try figure out a reliable auto setup for. So as you can see, I've got Euden, Panther, Gala Mym, and Halloween Lowen on this team, and it was actually thanks to some of y'all's comments that I was able to put this together and puzzle it out to find something that worked for me. My dragons, of course, are pretty strong with 2 Gala Mars, Gala Reborn Agni, who I just summoned, and Hybrid Hilda on Lowen, ultimately because I felt like he really didn't need a DPS dragon, and it was better to give him a survival-oriented dragon, with this being a auto battle setup. I think that the dragon on Panther is replaceable if you have Gozu Tenno. I'm not sure about the other adventurers. You could probably replace Mym with a slightly less powerful dragon, but certainly for Euden, you really need that Gala Mars. That is actually very crucial to this setup. The skill recharge and frequency with which Euden shapeshifts is very important here. As far as the skills that you're using as shared skills to get recharged, I found that Seime's shared skill has been working awesome for me. Not only does it reduce enemy defense, it hits in a line so it can hit lots of the adds. It helps with Scorch Rend uptime, which isn't a given with Panther only having access to that occasionally, and then it also dispels one enemy buff. The reason I came around to this was I was using Seime on my teams, and I realized Seime himself as AI never seems to cast this skill because it gets rid of his Shikigami. So I decided I'd be better off taking it as a shared skill, and it turned out to work pretty well for me. I think you could possibly also replace this with overdamage, but the redundancy of dispel is nice in case your shapeshift comes undone before you've dispelled all of the boss's buffs. So Onmyoto Exorcism in the first slot of my shared skills, and as far as the second slot, this one is going to be a little bit more predictable. But as I mentioned, this is a dragon-centric strategy. You're trying to get Euden to shapeshift as much as possible to cause dispel. So for the second slot, let's pull up the description here. Dragon Claw is Gala Mym's shared skill, and this gives you 5% dragon gauge when it connects. It also hits a large part of the map, so it's really good at dealing with adds. One of the unique things about Jaldabaoth being that you have to defeat enemies reliably, otherwise a counter will go down that can cause a wipe. So being able to hit in a wide area is particularly important. Now, as far as the dragons go, I said that they're already pretty invested. The weapons are 90 nodes all the way, and here we go. Let's talk about the Worm Prince. So for Euden, at the bottom here, I have 2 skill damage Worm Prince, so he has 40% skill damage. I gave him 100% sleep res. What I found was Affliction Guard in a 5-star slot, only 1 print slot, it just wasn't cutting it. I was still getting to fall asleep pretty often with Jaldabaoth's orb attacks, so that wasn't good enough. And what I think is probably most unique about my setup here is actually the Dragon Haste and Dragon Time. That makes it so that you're staying in Mars form longer, so you can dispel a little bit more reliably. The Dragon Haste on Euden's first skill and his 4th skill combines nicely with his co-ability, so you get really good dragon uptime with all of this. And I think the Peccary print for extra strength might be the most replaceable, but it does unlock a little bit of extra dragon damage via the affinity. I am still considering whether maybe to replace that with like a 13% defense print at HP 70% or not, like Wish Upon the Yule Tree. But for now, that is my Euden setup. He survives pretty well. He died a couple times in 32 runs, so not often, but if he does die, the whole run is going to fall apart because he is such a key component of dispel. Only Panther on one of her skills can dispel besides Euden, and it doesn't even happen that often, so she is not the most reliable dispeller here. Alright, as for Panther's build, this is what I've gone with, and it sort of worked the first time, but I do think there are some improvements that could possibly be made here. You see I have the double Punisher set up. I also have Flurry Strength on her. She does do most of her damage through basic attacks and 4-strike, so that strength stat is pretty nice. I noticed her AI likes to 4-strike a lot. If you look at her in the DPS sim, no part of her damage comes from 4-strikes, but the AI 4-strikes a lot. So I think that I actually would probably switch off Burning Punisher. Doesn't have good uptime for a 4-strike print, and that would help me unlock an additional 4-strike affinity bonus here as well. I do have a little bit of skill damage on her, as you can see as well. And finally, I have Sword Psalm. I want to upgrade that to the one with the 4-strike affinity when I can. That would be a further way of increasing her 4-strike damage. And then finally, I have the rest of the skill damage there at the bottom. So I think that this Panther build is not ideal, but it had been working for me pretty well on these runs. And Panther herself, in auto, she does a variety of damage through her skills, through 4-strikes, through basic attacks, so she's kind of all of the above, so it is pretty helpful that she has all of these good modifiers, with I think the Punishers maybe being the most replaceable just because you're usually not dealing Punisher damage on the ads that you need to clear off that quickly, although they do get burned by Euden's Blazing Circle and stuff, so a little bit hard to say. Moving on to Gala Mym here, once again with the double Punisher strategy. She has her skill damage, and I didn't think she could keep a combo, so I split her strength prints this way to give her the max strength bonus. I also gave her the other Sword Psalm print I had, but at the time I was doing these runs, it was not yet max unbound, so that's why I put it on her as opposed to Panther, because it required 2 sword prints to get the affinity bonus, and you can see I have 2 sword prints there. And then just threw on critical rate since she had already maxed out her skill damage elsewhere. I think that this is one I could swap out too, maybe putting the skill damage in her final 2 print slots, and giving her maybe, I want to say Dragon Haste might actually help her to give me more dragon uptime, but it's crazy when you see some of these successful runs in auto, how many shapeshifts you actually get. It's actually really substantial even without her having extra Dragon Haste. And finally, Lowen, his is actually a pretty crazy build with all sorts of different prints here. He has these 2 prints in the 6-star slot or the extra slot that are just there essentially for the affinity bonuses because I want to max out his skill haste and also give him a little bit of buff time as well. He does have max recovery potency too with the combination of a 3-star print and a 5-star print. He also gets the strength bonus from that 5-star buff time print, and his skill haste is also almost maxed. Anyway, that is pretty much the team here, so let me know what Autobattle has been like for you in the comments below. This is very heavy investment, so I should say that all of my elemental altars are very nearly maxed. All my dojos are maxed. I think I'm missing 1 level on 1 flame altar in this case, and my flame encyclopedia for dragons is maxed, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm missing 1 max unbound dragon of some type. My adventurer's encyclopedia is not maxed, so still very heavy investment to do this without Gala Leonidas, but it is possible. Let's take a look at some of the pitfalls, and then we'll close with some of the successful runs. Alright, so first attempt here that was a failure was actually the second run out of the 32 runs I did to complete this session, and this was a shame because it was so near the beginning that I think what can happen often is you get discouraged because a run fails. You're trying an auto setup and you just feel like, hey, let me go back to the drawing board and rework everything. Thankfully, I was really in this for the data collection and just trying to do as many runs as possible here. So I didn't end up giving up after this. I just hit retry, and I'm glad I did because after this, there was only 1 other run that failed. You'll see where it fails here, but it seems like some of the problems to me are when I first transition into the second phase, if I don't have a dragon up, Euden can get kind of bullied, and particularly once Agni gets summoned, if Euden gets hit by one of Agni's purple attacks, that can be very bad. Same thing with Void Nidhogg later in the fight I found, although usually by then you have more low and max HP buffs that maybe you can tank that and still be okay. But here I have low HP, I got this curse, Lowen's getting hit so he's not able to heal, and even though I go into a dragon for safety, I'm using my dragon, but then I get hit by Agni's attack at range, Euden dies, and once that happens, the run is generally over with this comp, so the other characters can't really pick it up, and here Lowen just got bodied too much. Ultimately, even after we revive, it's very low chance that you're able to actually recover with everything going on, and it got pretty bad pretty quick with Absolute Law. So that was one of my 2 failures with this run, which made me think maybe a little bit of extra healing ability on Lowen or some extra defense on Euden could go a ways toward saving me there, but I think it might have also just been bad RNG. I don't expect this to get to the same level of consistency as Gala Reborn, or not Gala Reborn Jeanne d'Arc, I'm thinking of the dragon, of Lilith, of course, with using Gala Reborn Jeanne d'Arc on Julieta. So anyway, here's the second run that didn't work out for me. It failed at a very similar point, but a little bit, I guess not even a little bit later, earlier, pretty much similar thing happened. I just got hit by Agni's purple laser. That's one way I think that maybe Gala Leonidas could help a lot because he is a ranged character. So maybe those will be more likely to target him rather than your lead. And this I expected to be more of a problem with the Euden lead than it actually was. But I found that when leading with a melee, such as Naveed, which I've tried in the past, sometimes Naveed would just like go off and fight random enemies, and he'd waste his dispel skills on them, and the order of dispel on Jaldabaoth, you dispel the regen last generally, so Jaldabaoth can heal a ton while Naveed is just over-attacking random enemies. That is a big problem that Euden kind of avoids because of his dragon form being able to attack everybody and just kind of exploding onto the map and having really good AoE hits. So Euden as a lead has really impressed and surprised me, but I think he needs that Gala Mym, as you'll see in some of the successful runs, in order to actually shapeshift frequently enough that he's able to do his job well and dispel very well. So this lasted a little longer than I would have expected considering Euden died there, but with our low DPS, we're not able to break the tome without Euden, and then things just go downhill very fast because another Void Agni gets summoned, we shapeshift with Mym, but things are really not looking good for us here. And I think we might even get like a revive moment here with the revive print that's on Lowen, because you could see, I don't think this is going to use our revive. Oh no, it did. Okay, never mind. But yeah, this just was a horrible run. I've had some in the past where like it seems to use revive, but it'll fail. Anyway, these are the successful runs. I decided just to show the ones at the very end, so run 29 and run 30, and all the runs in between, other than those 2 that I just showed, were successes, so that's why it ended up being 32 runs, and out of them 30 successes, because I wanted to get 30 clears. Nice thing about that is it's enough to get the final unbind on these new worm prints, so I have already max unbound about 3 of them, and while not as consistent as Lilith, if you're in a work from home situation or you're otherwise doing something else, like this is something you could have off to the side relatively consistently. It's not high enough consistency for the whole overnight full auto, but I say you could do that with standard if you'd like to, and then this requires a little bit more babysitting just in case of failure, but it's still pretty consistent. Other leads that I've tried, like Naveed, I mentioned some of the problems with him, but Lowen, one of the problems with Lowen lead I was finding was later in the fight, sometimes the purple attack that targets just spawns on him and that just kills him. You can see there I was able to survive Agni's devastation attack a little bit better. I also imagine if you maybe slow down the speed to maybe 1.5 times, that might also help. But this is actually a very hectic and chaotic phase of this fight, this run in particular, so considering this was able to get through, we're not even breaking the boss here, breaking the tome, because we're so far away from the boss and we defeated Agni so late into this phase. But considering that we had to fight through 2 Agnis, I feel like this comp is actually pretty reliable. It can handle an HP max buff on the boss, it can handle a regen buff on the boss, and still be able to clear the 100% defense or 100% strength buffs. So I found this to work pretty well, just the amount of dispel you need, and Euden being able to revive it, he's kind of irreplaceable in that respect. Like, Seimei doesn't use his dispel skill as an AI, Panther doesn't get dispel very often, Nobunaga as an AI, it doesn't feel like she's force striking the appropriate amount. Like, it feels like sometimes that 100% defense is up for a long time with my AI Nobunaga, so I didn't love her. Kimono Elasan, yes, she buffs everybody's strength, but her Scorch Run chance is kind of low, and she doesn't dispel or anything, so she seemed worse ultimately for me than Gala Mym, who actually ended up turbocharging Euden here. You've seen already how many shapeshifts have happened, and afterward, the flurry of skills that I get to use getting to Scorch Rend the boss, build up my Dragon Gauge again. In some successful runs, you can actually really chain together dragons very quickly. And because of the frequent dispel, you're less often going to let the boss regenerate a lot of their HP. And even when the Mars ends here, it gives you more ammo to take out some of those orbs. So there, it looks like Jaldabaoth didn't even get to keep any buffs, and at this point, it's pretty much going to be a clear here. If you would have had regen, would have had defense, that would require me to build up to another dragon before I actually got the KO, but look, the Dragon Gauge fills that quickly, so even if that had happened, it wouldn't be that bad of a scenario. Anyway, that was one successful run, and now let's move into the final one for this video. I do have some other auto runs happening at the time I'm recording, so I'm looking at them. They're 27 out of 30 so far, so I was able to make some of the print changes that I talked about at the beginning. More 4-strike damage on Panther, and kind of customizing those final few print slots that you get from the Sinister Dominion. And hopefully that helps the success rate. I think this is going to be over 90%, but again, at a pretty high level of investment, and I don't know how replicable this will be with lower investment. I do think that just the pure stats are probably helping me survive a number of corner cases, such as that one, where Euden's HP did look pretty low. It's not always a bad thing for Euden's HP to fall that low because it will force Lowen to use his second skill. Lowen has so much healing on his first skill that it is a problem that he doesn't use his second skill all that often. There are autos that I've run and won where at the end I'll look down and see I have 10% max HP buff on my lead character, on Euden, and it's like, was Lowen just not casting his second skill the whole time? What happened? What went wrong? But he really tends to hold it because his regen ticks are usually enough, especially if you're breaking or transforming at times to where you're not getting creeping corrosion as often on your lead character. If you're not getting it that often on them, then Lowen doesn't have much to heal. That devastation from Agni was really nice. Just dodged by Lowen, close range, we're able to maintain DPS. Now Agni's gone, and this is what I tend to see in this part of the fight. I usually do see a break here before a second summon, so last run was more of an anomaly than this one, and then usually I get a demolish on the tome, and it feels pretty smooth from this point on. With these summon executioners, this is where I feel like I would struggle with Naveed, because sometimes he would just go attack random stuff on the map and never really make his way over properly back to the center. Euden shapeshifting is just super strong. You're not getting knocked down. That itself is helpful because it means you can navigate your way toward enemies faster, and I think the dragon time is probably reasonably helpful here. At least it feels like it's been reasonably helpful. There are times when it seems like I'd run out of my dragon otherwise or not get off 2 skills with Mars. I'd only get off 1. And so I really think that that's probably a pretty good factor, along with the Dragon Haste Worm print too. I don't know exactly because I have not tested out all that many different comps, but that was another close call, wow. So yeah, those purple attacks from the Void Dragons are pretty brutal, but luckily I do have the max HP there to be able to survive at that time, and they were just taking a lot of damage. Again, get another dragon, that's going to help us out, able to dispel off the boss, so I think the rest of the fight is pretty smooth from what I remember, but I'm really curious to hear how this has been going for you. I've seen a lot of positive impressions of Jaldabaoth compared to Lilith. It seems like people really like the fact that this boss summons lots of enemies, that Curse of Nihility feels like less of a factor because it was so potent against the light element, but against Flame, there's still a good amount of adventurers that work well. It also seems to be the case to me that there are a ton of Gala Leonidas fans out there who are all really stoked about having access to him, and they're very happy that he does really well in this fight. I don't have him yet, maybe I'll get him in the future, but for now, I can feel pretty satisfied that this is working out alright for me. Anyway, y'all, that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you as always for watching, more to come soon, take care, and I'll see you next time.